Hello and welcome to another episode of the Leadership in Construction podcast. I'm your host, Michael, and today I'm joined by the inspirational Jessy Gomes. And today we're going to be talking about health and safety in the construction industry and all things diversity and inclusion. So Jessy, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure. So what I'd like to do, first of all, as I do with every podcast, is just to get to know you a bit more, a bit behind your background and how you got into construction. So could you give us a bit of a summary of how you managed to get into construction and what led to where you are today?
Yes, of course. So initially, I'd like to share that construction has been something I kind of grew up with because my dad worked in construction. He was working as a laborer for years, doing a concrete flooring in all the surfaces you have around the site. So I could see him at home doing this really extensive physical work. So it's something I grew up with. And it's not really something I wanted to do initially, but I did my study in quality and health and safety management. And when I was about, if I give it up, 24 years old, I arrived in London and I was looking for my first job. I wasn't intended to go into construction, but I feel like construction liked my profile. So I got my first job as an assistant CDM advisor, which is a construction design management. So this is how I get my first work in a consultancy company. And from there, I never really stopped. And until now, even though today I do slightly different things, but I'm still really, really present into the construction field. Yes.
That's brilliant. So you're very much on the health and safety CDM advisor type role. Just explain to those that might not be 100% aware, what is CDM and what is your sort of role inside of that field?
Yes, so when I started initially, I mean, before a construction design management advisor, we used to have this planning supervisor role, which is like really, really old. And when I came in, I was just started with the CDM regulation, and it was an advisor role. So it's all about advising client, designers, all the design team about what are the main components of safety and all the choices they are making. It could be cost, it could be material, it could be the way of building and the sequencing. And you could also be thinking about, once your building is ready, how you're gonna think about usability and but also dismantling this building as well. So it's really looking at the full cycle. So you look at the design, you look at the construction, you look at the operation of the building, but you also look at how you're gonna dismantle that building too. And what is the design philosophy behind? I think this is something when I was working as a CDM advisor, because I'm not doing it anymore actively, I was like really keen to understand what is the philosophy behind the design, because then when you come back in 15 or 20 years ago, you could read back and say, okay, has been thought in this way because we needed to do it this way, and all is documented. So I think it's crucial to know where you stand when you design and you take any decisions. So this is my perspective, and this is how I deliver mainly CDM. And I think I had a bit of, I won't say a different style, but I think you have the old-fashioned CDM advisor who was working as a planning supervisor before, who will bring old beliefs with them. But when I started to work, I literally learned English with the CDM regulation. So I knew all the regulation by heart. I don't know it anymore.
That's right, yeah. And I think what I like about that is I see it very much from a designer's perspective, because that's the sort of field that I am in. What I try and explain to the team that I work with, no matter how small their role, if you're inputting into the design, you're making some decisions, you have a duty of care to ensure what you're building is safe to construct, safe to use, and safe to dismantle. And then when you start talking on that terms with people, they start to realize there's a bit more of responsibility on their shoulders that they have to carry.
Yes,
yeah.
I think I do agree on that, yeah. Because some of the people take decision and they think that they're not having any liability, and this is when mistake occur. It's because any even cost decision, material decision, you take a decision, you have influence onto the design. So you have liability in terms of health and safety. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, as you say there, you know, so it could be the quantity surveyor making a material change, for example. And I think to the Wembley Stadium, there's that big arch around Wembley Stadium. I think it was a quantity surveyor that proposed the arch. So it does show that doesn't matter what your role is in construction, if you input into a change of material or selection or decision process that inputs into the design, it very much, you have to carry some responsibility for that health and safety aspect of it. That's something that I talk a lot about with my team.
Yeah, I do agree with that. Yeah, and it's also why the CDM took another turn in 2015. They wanted to empower and get really the client to be the lead into design decision by appointing themselves, the CDM, by being really embedded into the team, be embedded into where the decisions are taken from the start. And this is the more important things, because when you have people who doesn't work together, it's where it's becoming problematic when you have this add-on person, which is a CDM advisor.
Yeah.
I mean, before 2015, I think people were really thinking of a CDM advisor like a burden. It's a need to add on. They were not seeing any values. And with the 2015 regulation, you had to have them because it was part of the client duty. You had to have this principal designer, they changed the name, to sit down and be embedded into the decision from the start.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's absolutely key, because on most projects, when there's a decision to be made, where it might be material or a cost saving or something like that, it ultimately may come down to the client to help make those sort of decisions. And whilst we might talk about lead-in times and program impacts and cost and quality, very infrequently do we actually sit down and think about the sort of health and safety side of this in terms of the risk.
Cleaning is a simple one.
Yeah.
Think about the windows that you're going to put 3 or 4 meters away from the ground, and how are we going to clean it?
Yeah.
Is the operability around that? Is it safe? How many times a year do we have to do that? Roof, what do we have on top of our roof? Do we need parapet? Do we really need to install any equipment on the roof? Because then you have to think about someone has to go there.
Yeah.
Someone have to operate some tool up there on the roof. So maybe you can put some equipment on the ground, you know. Now you'll see it often, the roof are not used to add any piece of equipment part of the building. And if you do, you have to think through everything. Yeah.
And so how much of a leading, because how I think from a designer's perspective, I try and take a leading role in leading my clients through that health and safety process, that CDM risk assessment process. You know, it might seemingly be on the smallest of items, but the small decisions sometimes the ones that have impact. How much do you think, or how much can you, in your experience, do you see that clients take a lead on that, or designers need to take more of a lead on it?
I've seen towards the end of working as a CDM advisor, I could see designer really taking the lead. Before we transitioned to the CDM 2015, I thought that designer had really embraced to have CDM included into their duties and doing it really well by including the CDM advisor into all the communication going around, doing the risk assessment, trying to embed a review by the CDM advisor. And then I also saw the switch when the client becomes the one appointed the principal designer, and I've seen them doing it really well as well, and taking the lead into adding, making sure that everybody was like fulfilling their duty accordingly. So I've seen progression because I've been doing that for 11 years and we're gonna say 9 years as CDM advisor. So I've seen it progressing, and I've seen how people get on and taking CDM more seriously from designer to client, and definitely I saw it. Yeah,
I think that CDM 2015 regulations was pinnacle, because certainly up until then it always seemed like someone else's responsibility. It was the CDM coordinator's responsibility and not the designers. And as soon as it became the designers' duties, I think that's quite important. And one of the things I think, if you're a contractor or a designer or a client, if you do nothing else with the CDM regulations, you can download it from HSE. Just go and read what your duties are, and it's not huge amounts. I was going to say there's not a lot of paragraphs, but just understand what your duties are.
Yeah, and it's something that you have to check as a client. You need to check that you have a competent team as well, and happy to deliver effectively CDM. So you have to check your designer and your contractor competencies. This is one of the key requirements of CDM. It's also competence. Do you have the competence? Do you have the resource? Do you risk assess? And do you communicate effectively? Yeah, this is for me the main important things. Yeah.
Very fundamental. So what sort of things are you doing today then?
So today I work for a University College London, and I'm a technical safety lead for one of their school, the Bartlett School of the Built Environment, and it's a consortium of departments, and I look after the staff and the students.
And so how does your experience of construction sort of play into that today?
So on site, we have all sorts of equipment. So we have like equipment, it could be big equipment as you could find in construction site. And we have really talented academic working with robots, arms, for example, drones. I have a surgical lab as well within that same roof. I've got also students doing 3D printing. We have like all sorts of risk, I would say, and all sorts of activities going on this roof. And it's just like make me think like this could be the same activity you find sometime on a construction site. So for me, it's just like, it's not less risk being under a roof. It's quite overwhelming for me to have all this activity going on all together, but it's all about trying to get this community to work together as well. So it's really, I use all my skills from the year working as a construction health and safety and CDM advisor. So
you say at the moment you're sort of taking the lead around those health and safety elements, and your experience of the construction industry and certainly around CDM has played a massive part in that.
Yeah, and we do have also a bridge testing rig inside of the building. So this is a type of infrastructure that some people never see in their entire life. And I do work under one roof where we have that. We crush specimen and we try to determine how do they behave under certain type of load. We also have environmental chamber where we put bricks and we try to see what is a different environmental condition to see how can a wall behave. So it's really related to the new technology coming tomorrow in construction. So I'm really excited about this because there are also robotics, and this is the things I'm learning a lot. It's about robotics, and it's the robotics of the future coming into construction sites. So it's really excited to see that there are probably some operations that you won't need a physical labor to do, and you could make it easier for people and reduce risk of harms as well. So it's really exciting to be in the middle of like research, basically.
Yeah. And what's the attitude in terms of the take-up of health and safety procedures and precautions and risk assessments in university versus what it was like in the construction sector?
To be honest, it's not different.
Yeah.
The health and safety, stay health and safety. When you come with your hat, people seems like really, oh my God, you know, it's a health and safety manager coming around. So I think in all the environment I work, people have the same attitude when it comes to safety. They're really on their guard and they are not really sure if they can trust me. This is a main issue. There are a lot of like trust issues. There are a lot of information retained. There are a lot of communication issue as well, as that I'm trying to build this safety culture. It's an issue that also we have in construction. It stays the same component. It's not different. It's all about building this new way of working and collaborative working and having people working together and knowing what your neighbor is doing. Because when you're in a construction site and you are building a wall from one side and you have other labor doing something else in the other side, it's exactly the same component I have here. I have to make sure that people communicate effectively when they're having activities going on within the same roof.
Yeah, so it sounds very much about, as you say, the challenge that we face is around communication or effective
collaboration.
And trust issues is the thing that you brought up as well, around having trust. Do you think there's a reason why there is such a trust issue?
I think when I arrived on my new role, I didn't want it to use the word safety.
Mm-hmm.
If I could invent a new word to say what I do, I would have done it. But unfortunately, I'm not really good with English because I couldn't find myself a job title that will resonate more with my mission rather than what people think of my role. And I think that the word safety was quite not really giving justice to what I had to do, because I knew people will be really scared of having to deal with me just because I had this word safety on my title. And now it's too late, I'm using it. But again, and it took me a few weeks to say to my boss, okay, hold on. I want to think about how I want to be called here, because I just didn't want it to get people to scare off. But I got scared anyways.
So you could say keeping you alive officer or keeping you alive manager.
Yes, I think we need to come up with something, but ditch the word safety, because it's just bringing this connotation, and people I always say, I think you just got a bad reputation. It's just something historical, and the legacy of what is a health and safety officer or advisor. And I always say to people, I'm not here to police you. I'm here to help you. I'm here to support. I'm here to collaborate. I'm here to make your life easier. And fortunately, they see the legal side of things.
Yeah. And there is all that legislation and policy side of things as well. But in a very real way, just to help focus the mind of people watching or listening to this, when I last checked the figures earlier this year, in 2020, the construction industry took over 2/3 of a pie chart, which was the number of fatalities within industry. So construction are leading the way in number of fatalities within our sector. So, you know, it's a manufacturing and all those other industries are much better at health and safety than ourselves. And really, I don't think that's good enough. And I think we really, we shouldn't be groaning at the thought of having to do more health and safety training. I'm going through a whole suite of refresher health and safety trainings currently on my own organisation, and it just helps to remind you the things that you should be doing and not get complacent around it. Particularly as a designer, I've got to constantly put that into my role. And I think, as I say, to help focus the minds, that's why we do it. That's why you do your role, and that's why designers and contractors need to talk more effectively. It's because the number of fatalities in construction is still so very high.
And I think it decreased a bit, but it's really slow. It's been stagnant if you look at the latest HSE figure. And it's just not, you don't have like the big steep where you see progress. It's really slow. And I think there are a lot of things still to be done. Progress are done, but it's not fast enough. So we need to rethink. And construction is really old industries, and with old ways, and with old people. With dinosaurs staying there and keeping the same way going and perpetuating certain type of behavior. So I just can't wait for new blood to come. And with the labor shortage, there's an opportunity to get new faces, new blood, new ideas, and changes, basically.
Yeah, I mean, just to give some experience, when I've been on site, especially in the early days of my career, you would just go with whatever you were told to do by superiors and people that have been doing it for decades and decades before you, whether it be whether it be safe or not, because you're sort of I certainly was too naive to it all. And I look back at some of the things that I used to do on site and think that was so unsafe. Never let anybody that I work with now ever do that ever. That would just be totally irresponsible. So I think it does take a special sort of someone to be able to sort of be firm when you see something potentially being done unsafe, not give in to this, we've always done it, don't be so ridiculous,
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting what you say here, because one of the latest statistics from the government, they did a report on industrial strategy reports. You can find it online, and it's part of the construction deal. So basically, they said that 30 to 40% of graduates do not join the construction industry after 6 months after finishing the study. And this is probably due to a really poor experience. They probably they went there, and then they probably had like an awful experience that they say, I will never be back. So this is the latest figure. And I was really shocked, because I've been asked to come to university to speak about working in construction, to make these young people dream. And I had to be honest with the academics. I said, I'm happy to come and speak about my experience, but I'm not going to sugarcoat the reality of working in construction. I love it. That's why I'm still here. And I often say that I love construction, but construction does not love me back. And when I say construction, I think it's more the demography around construction. I do not look the part, and I do not sound the part. So it's really difficult for someone like me to come up and speak, because I always had people throwing up at me that I've got 40 years experience, and I will always feel diminished because I didn't. I was 24 the first time I come on site. I couldn't speak English properly. I was really shy. I should have everything put off to never come back again. But some people are more resilient, some are not, some trying really hard. And I left my country to come here and to try to do something else with my life. So I didn't have really much choice to keep a job I had, and it was in 2011, 2012. It wasn't like the best time of looking for a job at that time, because I left France because of recession. And I came here, and UK was like a place that you can do any jobs. So I was ready to do anything, but I was also ready to study, to find a job on my area of studies, even though I wasn't speaking English. So I think people need to be careful, principally people more mature and with more experience inside. The way you talk to a young person coming in, don't come and make it look like you are the one who knows everything and the young person know nothing about construction. They are here to learn. And I was really willing to learn things, and I was asking questions, and I was there. So if you have, I mean, the new generation is really different. They're just not the same. So they will just come one day and leave the other day. That's it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think the construction industry has a real challenge for attracting new young professionals into the industry. Yes. Given that I think coding and working for a social media company is probably a bit more sexy than working for a construction.
Of course, I always say that construction is not glamorous at all. It's just, I think we need to do some branding here.
I think you're right.
Branding to do. I don't know who's going to do it. I think the government is the best place to kind of lead the way and pushing organization in construction to be more appealing, you know. And you're not appealing when your full board is white, male, middle-aged, playing golf on a Sunday. I just play golf on Sunday, you know. So young people do not play golf on Sunday. Play golf is good for you, but the majority, they won't do this type of activity. They won't just, it's not going to be relatable, you know. They know ones that look like me. They know ones that get to the top who look like me. So why would I work in the type of constructions that I don't have any chance, basically? I'm not going to get any promotion for the next 5 years. People are not going to see me. I'm not going to be visible. Yeah, I think they really have to rethink and give chance to everyone. And when I speak everyone, I'm not speaking only from an ethnicity perspective, even though I could speak about that because I'm a part of the minority ethnic. I'm also a woman. I'm a mother, but it also, I don't see people with disabilities, even though you have different various types of disability and some that you see and some that you don't see. But for example, for mobility reduced people, I just don't see them on site. I don't even see them in the office. For 5 years working for this contractor, and I say, I never seen someone on a wheelchair. And I was like asking, where are these people, you know? Where are they? If you know any of them, I'm quite interested to know their experience of the construction industry because I just can't see them.
Yeah, quite. Not just on the construction site, but even in a design office, it's quite.
Yes, exactly.
Quite uncommon. So just sort of to bring into that other topic of conversation we're going to have around diversity and inclusion. You talk there obviously that you're being a woman in construction and also from a minority background. And I think the sad case is, particularly for women, and this isn't just the construction industry. I don't want to just hate on the construction industry because like you, I've got a big passion for the construction industry. If I didn't, I wouldn't be doing this podcast. But I do see it in other sectors as well. But I think, you know, being a passionate advocate for the construction industry, I know that we can do better. But I see it quite often, you know, the difficulties, the challenges that women in construction go through. And a lot of it I can see stems from visibility and having seen role models in the construction industry to sort of live up to. Has that been your experience?
Yeah, yes, exactly. When I started working, I couldn't see, it's not about people who look like me. It's, well, this is one portion, but it's also women at the top leadership level. You just can't see them. You have to go really, you have to do really your research, and I'm quite good to connect with people and to do networking, but I couldn't see those women. I couldn't see those diverse person, minority ethnic, or person with disabilities up there. So one day I decided to be one person who doesn't look the part, and to be visible, and to shine, and to be there, and to be loud as well. Because the issue, it's like, I think there are a lot of women. We are there, but then we're not a majority in construction. We're about 10 to 15%. It's what they say at the moment. And out of this woman, you probably have heard those, the 1% working on site. Think about it. The rest are probably cleaner, administrator, or women working in the offices, you know? So you have like a real question to ask yourself. It's like, you need to change the visibility of your board, the visibility of the senior leadership team, make people who are different, bring new ideas. And I must say, it's really difficult. And I tried really, really hard to break through. And I think, unfortunately, the glass ceiling does exist. It does exist. And apparently it's a concrete ceiling when you're a Black woman. It's even. So think about it. You think you can get through the glass ceiling, and then you have to go through a concrete. I'm not equipped to go through concrete yet.
Oh, well, that's the thing that I don't think anybody is there? And that's just what we come on to. It's like, why those blockers must be put in specifically in some areas.
Yes, of course. And plus, you need mentorship, you need allies, you need someone who's going to sponsor you. If you don't have this type of people around you within the organization, you're just going nowhere. I mean, I did a leadership program a few years ago. This type of program is supposed to help you to catapult your career, to go forward. It just didn't. And it's not because I didn't try hard enough. It's just because the organization wasn't ready to see people who look like me to be in front or on the forefront and have ideas and opinion. So then I left. Yeah.
And just sort of curiosity, really, from your experience, how much do you think that is intentional? How much of that is unconscious? Because I think a lot of it, and I wonder whether that people are really aware of their actions that impact on particularly women in construction, but also minority in construction as well.
I think this is a really, really good question, because for years I wasn't believing into unconscious biasing. I was like, this is an excuse to allow people to be biased, you know? You said I'm unconscious, I just don't know what I'm doing. And for years I thought that it was an excuse to allow people who recruit people who look like them, that they call mirrortocracy. I heard this word in one of a study published by the London School of Economics. So it's manager who recruit people who look like them. So you recruit a mirror, and it's all about mirrortocracy. If you don't look like your manager, you just don't have chances to go forward. And unfortunately, I had to pay the price. I did it. I've seen this. And I remember before I left for maternity leave, on my last day, I had to confront one of my clients because I felt his behavior, and I hold it for 9 months while I was pregnant, picking up onto behavior was like really strange, to the point that I developed anxiety while pregnant. And I just keep it for myself. I never say anything. And on the last day, I thought that I had to discharge myself. I thought that if I don't say to him what was going through, I couldn't give birth normally. So I did say, it was my last day, and I said to him, you know, you made me feel really uncomfortable for all these months. You were talking over me on meeting. You were really, how can I say? I mean, I didn't say the word at the time because I didn't know it was bullying at the time or harassment. I just did say what I thought his behavior was. And he looked at me in the eyes, and I think he was genuine. He said that he didn't know that he was making me feel that way. Because the things is like in the construction industry, they all do things in the same way. It's all systematic, it's a culture, it's all nurture. So people think that what they do is normal. And until a woman step up, a woman or a man, you know, said to him, hold on 1 second, what you're doing is not right. You know, they just don't know it. And this is when I realized that sometimes people do things that they just don't realize. I know. Yeah. I would have hoped I would never have to do that. And I think I would have be happy with myself saying he did it in purpose. He wanted to hurt me. But in that case, precisely, I thought he was genuine when he said he really didn't realize that he was behaving that way with me. But the thing is that the damage was done. And then after I had a child, and then all this anxiety, repercussion come up after birth as well. And the behavior didn't become better after I come back from maternity. So it's kind of escalate. So I think everybody have to check in with themselves. Say, am I right here? Is it weird? What am I doing? Is it right? Or you can ask someone, is it okay what I'm doing now? Am I out of the way? Am I recruiting people who just look like me? Did I say something who might have who am I been taken in a bad way because she's a mother, or because she's Black, or because she's a woman, you know? It could be a type of behavior who could trigger some people. So unfortunately, a traumatic experience when you have to come in a new workplace, and this is what's happened to me. Often you heal, and sometimes you have to heal in your new workplace, and you got triggered with certain behavior, and you're like, oh my God, this is happening again. And you have to be really clear with the person and say, hold on 1 second. You have to be really honest with people and say, I won't accept this type of behavior. And I think now I'm much, much stronger. I'm definitely another woman.
I mean, it sounds like you've taken an experience that was negative and turned it into a positive. You've definitely grown in terms of how you attach that attitude, because I can see sort of two common themes in that story that you've referred to, which is not having that open environment and safe space to talk to that person at the time it was happening, in order to work on that during that pregnancy period. And so it came all out at the end. And I think leaders are pinnacle in creating those environments in which you can feel safe. And the other theme, which comes back to looking at yourself and feedback, is being self-aware. If you can't realize that you're doing these things to someone else, making someone else feel this way, that you're not as self-aware, and you need to be, as a leader, you need to be self-aware and accepting of feedback in order for your own progression and to build a team. So it sounds very much like the person you're describing wasn't creating those environments and wasn't accepting of feedback. And listening to feedback is all about listening to grow and not listening to just respond to try and make the other person feel better. Because without growing yourself, you're not making that other person feel better. You're just listening, and nothing's actually happening. Action afterwards, I think it's absolutely important. And so by the sounds of
really crucial.
Yeah, and by the sounds of it now, you're certainly much stronger from that experience, and you tend to intervene sooner so you don't fall into it.
Of course, and I'm really tuned into other people as well. I look at behaviors and I observe, and I had to be really honest with my new manager, telling him that I won't accept certain type of behavior, and I'm really aware of things around me. Unfortunately, it's part of the trauma. When you've been you went through a workplace trauma, you have to do the work. Otherwise, you just stay into this state where you depress, you're hopeless, you're worthless, and you don't see the end of the tunnel. And I've been there. I didn't know how I will come up on the other side. I thought I will never work in construction again. And I think I'm taking a break now of the construction while I'm building myself stronger, because once I'll be back, I mean, I will never accept any type of behavior like this. I'm just like, I think I'm re-equipping myself. And what you said earlier, it's called post-traumatic growth, actually. It's got a name, you know, when you go a trauma, and then you grow from it. So I'm still learning, I'm still working on it, but I want to teach now. I want to inspire women. I want to inspire men as well to be more self-aware, as you mentioned earlier. Yeah.
You're certainly doing that for sure. And I think I think that's definitely the sort of, I can see that you're becoming more self-aware and knowing what you, and I think that's important. You've got to understand what you will accept and what you won't accept. Obviously, there is a way in which you approach that with people, because if you approach it in a conflicting manner, you get conflict back. Yes. But certainly, all leaders, and particularly in the area that we're talking in the construction industry, self-awareness, we could all be a bit more self-aware.
Yes,
I think so.
Yeah, definitely. So, I think it's something important.
Absolutely. So we're coming towards the end of this podcast today. So before I ask the last question, I just wanted to say an absolute big thanks to you, Jessy, for joining us today and giving us experience, sharing all your experience, because you are an inspiration, truly. You're doing some absolutely fantastic things. And if I honestly urge everybody watching and listening to try and connect with Jessy and get onto social media and look at all the great stuff that you're publishing around diversity, inclusion, and around health and safety, because you're doing some fantastic stuff in that area. So I want to just wrap up with the final question, which is, what do you think is the most important aspect of leadership?
Yeah, I think I'm going to have several aspects. So the first one, it's like, I'll say, when you're a leader, it's admit your errors, you know. Sometimes you have organization, they're going to have like people coming to them, telling them about unlawful behavior. And the first things they're going to do, they're going to get an army of lawyers, and they won't listen anymore to what the person have to say, even though they're not right, you know. So this is what I think. This is not being a leader if you can't admit your errors, if you can't look at the camera and say, we made that mistake and now we have rectified. And something I've been really good at, it's when I'm making mistakes, I always say, oh, I did this, I'm going to repair this. I think this is really important, and anybody should be able to do that. And then it's integrity, you know. It's something that it's one of the core value I have. I just like, if I didn't have integrity, I won't be where I am today, because you can't pursue being visible and pursue being yourself and being authentic without this core value that is integrity. It's something that is really deep down to me. And then the last one, it's emotional intelligence. If you're not able to control your emotion, to feel someone's emotion into the room, to be able to be empathetic with a woman coming back from maternity leave, who is probably going through the most disruptive moment of her life, and you have body changes, you have all the physiological changes and all the hormone, you have to be self-aware and also being able to demonstrate self-control, the things that you just can't do, you know, with certain people. So I think maternity, it's really something like a return to work of young mother. It's something that should be taken more seriously from a mental health perspective. They're really a danger to not look after a young mom returning from maternity. They just leave the workplace. This is what I did. I just left. So women need to know their worth. If you're not treated fairly, just move on. They're always a better place for you.
Absolutely. That's absolutely fantastic and very inspiring. So Jessy, thank you ever so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
No, pleasure's all mine. Thank you so much.
Thank you.